All right, good morning. Good afternoon, I should say. I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank my colleagues in government and the state Senate who are here today. I want to thank our conference chair, the Republican conference chair, Senator Pam Helming. I want to thank Senator Dan Stec. We also are joined by Senator Borrello and Senator Alexis Wyke to talk about specifically the EPR bill, but also sort of the end of session priorities, and I think a main difference between our conference and the Democratic conference. This bill is not new. I'm, of course, Senator Rob Ortt, this Republican leader of our conference. This is not a new bill. This bill's been around for a couple years. It is sponsored by Senator Harckham in the state Senate. And you know, I was thinking about this morning as I was coming in, I was looking at the Siena poll that touched about the range of issues facing New Yorkers. And the top issue in poll after poll is affordability. It's the cost of living, the cost of everything from putting gas in their car to food on their tables, to how they're going to pay the rent or the mortgage, how they're going to save enough for retirement, how the hell they can send their kids to college, and how they're going to stay in this state. There's other issues in there, obviously, crime, anti-Semitism, but affordability time and time again comes back. And even my Democratic colleagues talk about affordability. And yet, the issue that we're trying to solve, and this is, I'll let my colleagues talk maybe more details on the bill and sort of how it affects their districts. But this is what, you know, we often talk about this bill and this legislation, and we talk in these flowery terms, and we don't talk in terms of what is the practical impact for people on the ground? How does this impact regular New Yorkers on the ground? And I'm going to tell you how this bill, of course, would ban a number of single-use items. Items like single-use or single-serve cheese. So you got those cheese slices, Kraft cheese slices, the wrapping, those comes in individually, that would be done. Lunchables, those would be out. These are the issues that we're trying to solve. I find it impossible to believe that if I pulled a New Yorker aside out here, out of this building, not in this place, but outside there, if I say, what's the biggest issue facing your family? What do you think your legislature, that you spend more money on than most other people across the country, what do you think they should be working on? What do you think they're solving for you? I would bet you my entire salary they wouldn't say Kraft single-serve cheese slices. We gotta make sure those are banned. We gotta save the planet by getting rid of those. Lunchables. We gotta make sure that my kids can't get Lunchables. The containers they come in are killing the planet. Give me a break. Give me a break. And you know who this is gonna, you know, very often these policies are drawn up, no doubt by some well-meaning people, carried by well-meaning legislators from Westchester County, great county in New York. But you know what? It's the most affluent county in America. In America. Those are not the people who are going to be impacted by it. Yeah, they'll be impacted, but their life will continue. Their daily life will move on. Their style of life will not be impacted. The people who live on, you know, the high-rise buildings in Manhattan, their life will go on. But you know who won't? The people on SNAP benefits. People who very often who are going to grocery stores on government benefits, who are hanging on by the margins. These are the items, guess what, that they buy for their kids. It's also going to obviously put companies out of business. It's going to make it harder to compete in New York. Now that's nothing new. We love to do that. The Democrats in New York love to put companies out of business. Or they don't care about putting companies out of business. Because profit, of course, is evil, but more to the point, they're just indifferent to it. Because the person in Manhattan, they'll just order the same stuff on Amazon. And it'll get shipped to them from another state where it's not outlawed, where this crazy law is not in effect. But the person who makes these products here in New York, the person who makes, let's say, the little, and I know Senator Helming's going to talk about this, McDonald's, you get your sweet and sour sauce. Does anyone think I don't think I've ever heard one call from any of my constituents who said, Senator Ortt, please do something about the barbecue packet that I get when I get my son's Happy Meal. You know what they tell me? They tell me the Happy Meal is too damn expensive, Senator Ortt. It's too damn expensive, and I can't afford to take my kids there anymore. And one of the reasons it's too damn expensive is policies that we pass here. Make no mistake. It always gets passed on to the consumer, and it's always the people at the margins or the people who are hanging on that this impacts. These are the problems we're trying to solve. Now, there's real things we could be doing. There's real negotiations. I've met with people in this industry, and of course, it affects multiple industries, grocery stores, chemistry council members, people who make carbon black ink. And they've all said there have been amendments put forward. There have been solutions that we have come up with that the industry, that employers know we can do, we can actually get there, and it will not have a huge negative impact on consumers, on our employees, on our ability to do operations here in New York. To date, not one of those amendments has been put in. In fact, the bill hasn't been amended at all, as far as I know, at all. A bill of this scope and of this magnitude. And in fact, the environmental advocates tried to jam this thing through when we came back from break 2 weeks ago. If it's a good bill, you don't have to jam it through. You don't have to do it at 2 a.m. You can do it in broad daylight on a beautiful day like today, in the full sunshine of New York, and explain to New Yorkers why this is good policy for them. That even though you're gonna pay more, even though it's gonna ban things that you need for your family, even though it might put your family member out of business or hurt workers in New York, even though it will do all those things, it's worth it because we're gonna save the planet. And that's nonsense. There's nothing in this bill, nothing that will save the planet. It's dubious whether this does anything for the environment. But it's not about that. It's never been about that. It's about putting companies out of business. It's about increasing the cost of everyday, regular goods that people need. It's about driving more people out of this state. That is clearly what the goal of policies like this. Of course, there's the bottle bill, which is sort of the ugly cousin of the EPR bill. There's a push, obviously, there too. That's even less, it's even more dubious what that bill will do, except increase the cost of buying, vitamin water or any of the items that come in containers covered by the bottle bill. But there's a push to do that too. There's a lot of opposition. Labor's lined up, businesses lined up, but this is about consumers. There's always groups here who are for and against bills. This is about consumers and the people in New York who, in poll after poll and issue after issue, and my colleagues will tell you, the number one issue we hear about across party lines is the cost to be here in New York. This bill will increase the cost to live in New York. Full stop. Whatever anyone else thinks about it, however great somebody thinks it is, no one can tell me or deny that it will increase the cost to be here in New York. That is what my colleagues at the end of session, my Democratic colleagues, are pushing, to pass a bill that will increase your cost to live in the state of New York. And that is why people are fleeing the state of New York who can afford to. Get out while you can. That's the message from my colleagues in the Democratic Conference. Our conference is vehemently opposed to this bill. We've had members who were open to supporting amendments and have encouraged amendments that have not been forthcoming because the environmental lobby refuses to accept any of the amendments. And shame on them. I'm not going to have their finger wagged at me and they're moralizing about how this is going to save the planet. Bullshit. This is going to increase people's costs, and the saving of the planet is dubious at best. At best. And to talk more about how this is going to increase costs and make life worse here in New York for employers, employees, and regular New Yorkers, I'm going to call up someone who has a district business that will be absolutely negatively impacted, and jobs and his constituents in his district. And someone, by the way, a very strong steward of the environment, represents the Adirondacks. There is no part of New York that is more dependent economically on the environment than the Adirondacks in the North Country. And Senator Stec has been long a strong steward and advocate on there. But even he knows on this bill, the environmental impacts are dubious, and the economic and affordability impacts are absolutely detrimental. And so I want to call up my colleague and friend, Senator Dan Stec.
Thanks, Leader. Thank you, Leader. I want to open by highlighting a couple things that Leader Ortt just mentioned. He drove home the point of affordability. And that brought me back to my time at the last 2 years' budget hearings, asking questions about green initiatives, the carbon initiatives that we have, the climate change initiatives, and the cost, or a lack of estimate of cost. And if I had a nickel for every time I heard a member of the administration at these hearings say, well, the cost of doing nothing is greater. You know, the next time I hear somebody at a budget hearing say the cost of doing nothing, I'm going to stop a mid-sentence and I'm going to say, is what? If you can't put a dollar amount, a figure, on what this is going to cost, when you know we're talking about things that cost hundreds of billions of dollars, then it's not ready for prime time. It's not ready to roll out. It is driving, if you don't know what the cost is, it's too damn much. The other thing that he pointed out is the impact that this will have on everything that our consumers buy. And wealthy people, they're going to absorb this cost. This is the most regressive thing that we could do. This is going to hurt the people that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle thump their chest over and lecture the rest of us about that they're looking out for. This is going to hurt the lower end of the socioeconomic classes the most, because it's going to consume a larger part of their incomes. Now, Leader Ortt mentioned my personal background. This will be my opportunity to give him a little kudos here. His wisdom, he picked me as his NCON ranker, not because I was the NCON ranker in the Assembly for all 8 years I was there, which is true, and not because I'm the son of a forest ranger and Adirondack 46er, and no one knows the North Country better than I do, or seen more of it up close. But he also knew that my district is so large that I represent so many higher education institutions, including Clarkson University now, my alma mater, where I have a degree in chemical engineering with honors. I worked in a paper mill, and when I got out of the Navy's nuclear power program, I moved back to Glens Falls. I worked at a packaging plant as an engineer. So there's no one on either house and either side of the aisle that is going to kid me about what this bill means and does. Because I have a degree in chemical engineering, and I worked at a paper mill, and I worked at a packaging plant. So let's be clear, the Packaging Reduction in Infrastructure Act, commonly known as EPR, would be devastating to businesses in New York State and especially in my Senate district. Under this bill, producers would have to pay for the recycling costs of more than 30 individual materials commonly used in printed paper and packaging. These recycling costs include the collection, transportation, treatment, and disposal of the materials. These materials include carbon black, which is used as a pigment in printing inks on labels and packaging. But there's a major problem. As of right now, there is no commonly viable recyclable substitute that can be used in standard four-color printing. There's 8,000 label and packaging manufacturing jobs in New York. This bill and its refusal to acknowledge the actual realities of how packaging is actually made, you'd effectively end the label and packaging manufacturing industry in our state, 8,000 jobs. But there's an even bigger issue with carbon black. Any packaging coming in from anywhere else in the world would be mandated to adhere to this. That means that the box of Cheerios, the Amazon package that comes out of state, pretty much every boxed packaged material that is sold in and shipped to New York would be impacted by this unrealistic standard. And that's just one industry. Let me tell you about the effect this would have in my Senate district. The 45th Senate District is home to many businesses that would be harmed by this legislation. Georgia Pacific is located in Plattsburgh, Finch Paper in Glens Falls, Birch Bottle and Packaging in Queensbury, Glazier Packaging in both Malone and Potsdam, Potsdam Specialty Paper in Potsdam, and Silvamo, formerly International Paper in Ticonderoga. Let's take a quick look at Glazier. It distributes meat and other food products. This legislation would force them to completely overhaul how it packs and ships deli and butchered meat. Going forward, their products would have to be packaged and shipped in recyclable packaging. Places like Glazier use materials that balance food preservation and quantity. Recyclable packaging is less durable when it comes to food preservation and storage. Food can and will spoil more quickly. To avoid these kinds of losses, Glazier will have to package less product per pack.